All right. I believe we have started recording. How's it going, Dr. Larry Goodman?
Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon over here.
Yes, right. Good afternoon.
I'm here administering this is myself, Martin Casado. And today we want to touch upon belief systems and limiting belief systems. To go into that, I want to first to define these things to actually go into our conversation. So this is and one term that I found in limiting beliefs are those which constrain us in some way. Just by believing them, we do not think, do, or say the things that they inhabit. And in doing so, we impoverish our lives. We may have beliefs about rights, duties, abilities, permissions, and so on. Another one on a classic one on Anthony Robbins that I pulled up here is, what is a belief? An actual belief. It's a feeling of certainty about what something means. Beliefs create the maps to guide us towards our goals and give us the power to take action. The challenge is that most of our beliefs are generalizations about our past based on our interpretations of painful and pleasurable experiences. Often we are unconscious about what we believe and how those beliefs affect our actions. Our limiting beliefs can cause us to miss out on the things that we want most, and our empowering beliefs can drive us towards to the life we want to live. So hearing that, and so the first step in, or some other stuff here, but it's, the first step in replacing old disempowering beliefs with new is empowering beliefs is to understand the certain facts. But yeah, I don't want to, he has some exercises in that, but I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. What is something that you've learned over your life on the limiting beliefs?
So we basically live the lives that we've seen scripted, acted, and demonstrated by our mother, father, sister, brother, teacher, preacher, authority figures. And they might even start in the womb, I don't know, but they certainly begin to take place in early childhood. And some of them are deliberate, where someone sits you down and says, you do it this way, you don't do it that way. You can do this, you can't do that. This is right, that's wrong, this is good, that's bad. But others that are even more durable and powerful are the ones where you learn the scripting by example.
Right.
You see, usually it's a parent, because your parents function basically as God in your universe as far as demonstration of the response to stimuli. And
right.
So if you are fortunate enough to have had resilient parents, and that's a whole piece related to limiting beliefs, if you had resilient parents who lead by example and show you the picture and the set of behaviors that go along with strength, then you'll manifest that.
Right.
And if by the same token you have less than empowered parents who respond to stress in less than an optimal way, you will start to develop the sense of modeling that behavior as if that's your only option.
Right.
And we do that. And as a result of doing that, the scripting that takes place in the early childhood years becomes part of the template that we use in early adulthood.
Absolutely. And so many of us, I mean, in that same sentiment, I got to a point in my life that it's an ongoing process of like our parents, their parents, parents, and it goes down the line of, and then we don't know anything other, and it's just the way it is, right? And that's something I've seen in my own life is that pattern, and we can break that. That's the beauty of that.
The way you break it, I call them the 3 A's to change. There's awareness, that you're living out a pattern. There's the acceptance that that's what's going on, as opposed to the typical initial response, unfortunately for most of us, is denial. No, that's not what's happening. You don't understand. It really is that way, whatever that is. And then the third one is to take the appropriate action. Because these limiting beliefs, almost by definition, are restrictors. You can't do this, you can't do that. Take something as basic as a child in school is learning to color, and they're asked to draw a tree. And the child draws the tree and makes the tree purple. And the teacher comes by and says, no, that's not a tree. Trees are green. And from that point forward, if the lesson is learned, trees are green to that kid. Coloring in the lines, coloring inside the lines is another, it's a limiting belief in a way.
Yeah.
And the whole of sex role stereotypes are all built upon limiting beliefs. Who plays with dolls? Who plays with guns?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And when the circumstances change, that's when you start to really recognize that you're being held a prisoner of your limiting belief. Because when you try to react to the now with the strategy that came from the past, very, very, very often it's a mismatch.
Right. Is that going to expectations?
Sure.
But the expectations that were built upon by your parents or authority figures?
Yes. And based upon, how can I put it? Based upon learned behavior creating what they call a facilitative neuronal pathway. It's a habit. And once the habit is ingrained and learned, it's literally energetically easier to do it the way you learned before than to do it some other different way, even at the risk of creating adverse consequences. And that becomes the real place where if you're lucky, the light bulb will eventually go off, but it becomes the driving force of all kinds of compulsive behavior.
Right. Now we go into the next. So in that same sense, we don't get what we want, we live what we believe we are.
Yes. So back to that whole point about the scripting. Assuming someone is watching this now, we're viewing, if you pay attention, in the political process. And I don't want to get political, but it's a classic example of what we're talking about, is that the current president is clearly evidencing alternate scriptings in alternate settings between when he reads from the teleprompter and when he's before his audience responding in what he believes to be the way that has worked in the past. And that's where the scripting is further reinforced, is you get the endorphin bath, the pleasure centers fire off when your perceived needs get met.
Right.
And so you start to learn that association, And when the right set of circumstances gets set up, you respond that way anyway, even if it's not necessarily appropriate. The best / worst example is the addict or alcoholic who continues to drink or drug in spite of the adverse consequences.
Right. And that brings in back to the limiting beliefs that once you see those scenarios and so forth, life is, I am, people are, and that's how we go establishing those belief systems, right?
Yes.
And when you're saying, and not to go political, but that is what you're saying there is they point out these stuff that are, well, my life is, and I am this. But then when you see this in that political realm and they're pointing it out, that's when it affects our limiting belief or rearranges it.
It brings you face to face with the limiting belief, because especially in times of rapid change of circumstances like we're in now, there's the natural reluctance to change,
right,
that is on a collision course with the need to change. Because when circumstances evolve and grow and change at the pace that they're doing now, if you attempt to use the old solutions, objectively, the disinterested third party can look at it and see that it's not going to work. The coal industry, based on the changes in the whole energy production system in the United States, arguably those coal mining jobs are not going to come back. Anybody who thinks that they are is operating out of a limiting belief that the only jobs that those people can do that'll provide them with the lifestyle that they've become accustomed to is to be a coal miner. Nobody has said to them yet, let's devote some of that money that we were going to use, we thought, to retool with coal. There's any one of a number of other occupations and positions that they could be trained up to do that would be a match for present day technology. And yet that doesn't grab the headlines.
No. Well, that goes to the next thing is, like, in limiting beliefs, they carry with them consequences.
Sure. Because you're dealing with a mismatch. You know, a skill and a job are very much like a lock and a key. If you don't have the right skills and you put that into the workplace and it isn't a good fit, then the lock, called the position in the career, etc., it won't open.
Right.
You can bang on it, you can try to force it, you can almost anything. If it's a mismatch, it's a mismatch. And we do that. We do that in relationships, we do that in the workplace, we do that everywhere.
Absolutely. We absolutely do that. What is this, when in brainstorming your emotional states you believe are most important for you to experience?
Most important emotional state to experience, I would say, is joy and peace. And I say they're the most important because in this culture, they're so undervalued. They're so minimized as to their importance. We live in a materialistic culture that places all the value on production and consumption.
Yes.
And anything that diminishes your effectiveness at producing and consuming is thought to be a waste or not a good utilization of time, energy, and money. So you take something like a discipline such as meditation, and if you understood really the health and mental health benefits of meditation, it ought to be taught in the schools, starting in elementary school.
I agree.
The health benefits of that subtle change would ripple through the culture and wouldn't cost much to do. And to the best of my knowledge, I've not heard that proposed in too many places.
Yeah, I don't see that in the U.S. at least. But I would see that, it's funny in limiting beliefs, and it's the same, like you said, if they were to teach them in schools, but, how do you, it's almost like water, right? They all say, like, drink certain kind of water, so I'm going to only drink this water. But if you go to a restaurant, they're going to have tap water and so forth. Where I'm going, that is the same with our belief systems. Like, schools and teachers can teach a certain way, but, the way you were brought up and the way your family, so it's so conflicting. And that's why
when you understand what the history of the development of the public school system really was, you can understand the mismatch. The public school system was designed to create minimally competent factory workers who could show up on time, perform an assigned series of tasks, and be predictable.
Right.
So you build in that sort of habitual training to conform. And in a different environment, such as we live in now, where creativity and we'll call it outside the box thinking is so critical, that kind of a school system seems woefully inadequate, because you're literally breeding conformity in as opposed to creativity. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense, big time. Especially when you first start school and they tell you, and you're looking for a class when you start middle school, and they tell you, your class is on the 3rd floor by the pool. You know what I mean? And there is no 3rd floor, and there is no pool. So it's already the developmental stages of bullying.
Yes.
But it is funny. It makes so much sense. You got to go to class, certain time, period ends, you go to your next class. Yeah, it's like herding the sheep or going to Disney World like I experienced.
Exactly right.
I don't even want to get into that to stay on point. But within our belief systems and understanding, could these be the same as for writing your values? Meaning, like, these are my new belief systems, even though I was raised this way. And
when you come upon a pivotal moment, when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, that's when people change. I have rarely seen anybody come upon a sense of a desire to make the difficult changes necessary to evolve because everything's going so well in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, what's not going well, what gets their attention, could be anything in any of the 7 areas of life. But there's almost always some yearning that is created by an unmet need that bubbles up to the surface.
Right.
Something that in your previous value system you didn't value highly. And so you made a certain series of choices and you took a certain series of actions that created a certain series of consequences that have led you to some place where you never really planned on going.
Right.
Or you planned on going there because you were taught that that was the expected thing to do. And you got there and you found it to be strangely lacking or empty. Not a good fit for who you truly are.
So and that in and of itself is conflicting too, because we're in an age of like, understand your values, understand your goals, and go for it, hustle. And then we have the limiting beliefs that we were brought up with in this, and that's where you create this, I feel like, because I wanted to say versus, but this is almost conflicting to me. In a world of
So
always have your values, but we have limiting belief systems.
back to that educational model and the old industrial model. In the 50s and 60s, when that whole system really started, might have been the 40s, I don't know, but for a long time, you were being trained up for a career that was going to last you a lifetime. When then you'd reach the age of retirement and get the proverbial gold watch and your pension.
Right.
Having stayed maybe with the same company for your entire work career. For people growing up now, I believe that they are growing to expect that there are going to be a series of career changes over the course of a lifetime based upon changes in the technology and changes in the workplace and maybe even changes in the weather.
Right. Well, and that's not, not to bring up another thing, but in the older generation is kind of blaming the younger one for not having their limiting beliefs, like you should work, you should do this stuff, and every day isn't a hard day's work. But everybody back then, you would work for a company for 30, 40 years, get your retirement and do that. Now that whole structure is, you're lucky if you get 2 years, especially in advertising or marketing. I think it's like a year or 2 years that you're on to the next.
Yes.
So I guess my question there is, like, again, these are all conflicting belief systems and the new values that are being set forth.
Well, and the biggest value that is being selected for is flexibility. The willingness to change with a modicum of poise and grace based on the conditions that you confront. Because there's nothing more stressful all the way to the point of pitiful than trying to deal with a set of now conditions with a set of yesterday or last year or 10 years ago skills and solutions.
Right.
You see it now going on even in the retooling of the retail industry, where you're seeing the end of brick and mortar to be replaced by distribution centers.
Right.
Where the actual interface of the sale is all done virtually.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. There's a Capital One bank that just opened up over here in West Palm, and they're a bank, but it's an experience center. It's more they're in the middle of like the main highway, like everything flows right by it, and they're just, all they want is even when you go in, like you want some free coffee, you want to use your computer here, here's some games, like it's all coming into
because you've got to retool the brick and mortar to make it worthwhile for people to come for a different experience, for a heightened experience, because just to get the merchandise is no longer necessary. Not only is it no longer necessary, but the technology is now making it that it isn't just that you can get the same quality merchandise virtually, but you take something like clothing, where you're now having the technology to make custom clothing made to measure for you based on a computer algorithm and an app that is on your cell phone.
Yep.
So, and that's being able to be produced profitably for a fraction of the cost of a custom-made, handmade shirt that you would go and purchase from a tailor.
Yeah. I was seeing one like future stuff of the actual thread printers with all the different colors, and you would put whatever Gap or this on your computer, and I want this shirt, you put, and that it'll send the message over, the information to make that shirt, and you have a Gap shirt printed out of your house based upon your material that you have in your computer, your printer for that.
There exists you'd have to call it it's a virtual bookstore.
Yeah.
That looks like a computer sitting on top of a printer. And you can order a book that you're going to purchase, sit down and have your coffee and the rest of your brick and mortar experience, while one copy of that book is printed, bound, and prepared for you. Meaning that you don't even need to keep an inventory on hand.
Yep.
And when that catches on, who even knows what the ramifications of that are going to be?
Yeah.
In every industry. And see, that's really the point of the inevitability of change, is that there are certain industries that are at the, you'd have to call it the leading edge of the changes that are coming. But you got to rest assured the changes are coming everywhere.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, and you have to adapt, right? There's no, like, I remember there was a common theme, even like with my father, how you can even relate in a sense of like, oh, I'm too old to learn this stuff and this, and they get buried alive and they have to get taught by their 4-year-old or a 4-year-old, the niece or nephew or grandchild to show them the simplest of tasks. But
let's even take a look at the very format and the very material that we're putting together to disseminate.
Mm-hmm.
In old technology, you couldn't be without a very expensive camera and broadcasting system. You couldn't be sitting where you're sitting and me be sitting where I'm sitting and us producing this exchange without the expenditure of tremendous amounts of capital. And probably you'd need a cameraman and I'd need a cameraman, and they have to secure the connection.
Some connection,
and this is all being done.
And a van outside with the antenna.
A van outside yours and a van outside mine with the antenna, and you'd be purchasing the time by the minute.
Yes. All right, I'm going to tell you the secret to the belief systems, but we have run out of money and time. So on to the next one. Join in next week when we have.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. And that's the great sale. Back to the limiting beliefs and having a semi-solution for them. And without you telling me, like yours, or if you want to say some of them, but we know our limiting, like if we can say top 3, here are our top 3 limiting, these are mine, for example. Here's my so-and-so and so-and-so, and my top 3. You have them off the top of your head? Do you know them? Your limiting beliefs?
Mine?
Written them down?
It's been a while, but men don't cry.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The
cream stuff. You hate the any man cream?
Yeah. Through hard work and perseverance, you can accomplish anything.
Right.
That one in particular is so. Through hard work and perseverance, you will come up with, in many ways, the most difficult solution to the problem.
Right.
Because if you keep persevering against it the same way, the possibility that there's an easier solution doesn't even occur to you. It doesn't even occur to you to look, to see, to make the change.
Right. Absolutely. And in knowing those in a more of a personal level, and this is probably even like I guess in a stoic way of seeing it, is what are the worst consequences that could come from living with those limiting beliefs?
Lack of joy, lack of spontaneity, the frustration that comes from continuing to try to use an outmoded solution to a problem in spite of the fact that you have no evidence that the solution worked before for a very long time.
Right.
You take something as basic as solving the simplest problem. And when you reach the frustration point, one of the big lessons to learn is that at a certain moment, you stop trying to force the solution and you put the problem down, go do something else, and come back with a fresh perspective. And more often than not, you'll come up with a solution very simply that's completely different than anything that you were attempting to do while you're in the thick of it.
Right. Right. That's absolutely. I do that all the time, right? I feel like I need to accomplish something this and like, all right, bring out the coffee. It's 12 midnight. I'm going to do this until I got the solution. And it's so wrong. I don't come up with, I just start fiddling, doing other things. I'll glance upon it. But then the next night I did a good night's sleep. The next morning accomplished it, woke up and it was so much fresher. My head was straight. So that's something, a belief system I had. I was so used to coming from school, finishing projects and then work and then get it done. So even if I have to go to the next day. But yeah, it's you definitely, a good night's sleep is that the old school remedies are so full at play. You need to have a well-rested thing. And there's so many studies on that. It's ridiculous. It's our limiting belief system, things that we got to get it now, you know?
Right.
And so that was a good one. Is there any other like kind of exercises or stuff that you apply to yourself and these finding these limiting beliefs, or like rearranging them, or just letting the universe take play?
Trusting the process. Because more often than not, over the course of a lifetime, there is that paradox about goal setting, which is that you set the goal and you go for it. And more often than not, if you have sensory acuity and you see the feedback coming as it happens to your attempt to achieve the goal, you wind up having to refine your policies and procedures and plans, and you might even have to, modify the goal.
Yep.
I remember a time when I was going back to exercising after having been ill. And my goal was to get through a spinning class. After not having exercised in over 7 months. And I got to the spinning class, and after less than 10 minutes, I had to get off the bike and leave the room, and I threw up.
Did you?
Yeah.
Intense.
And so fortunately, I was blessed with a good mentor, and I told her what was going on, and she suggested to me something simple, which was to just do any kind of movement just for 10 minutes, anything. And then the next day do 11, and then the next day do 12, and wait till you were up to an hour of sustained movement before attempting to go do a high intensity spinning class for an hour.
Right.
And when it was said to me, it made so much sense. But my ego had been all involved in, nope, got to get this done, got to go do it. I'm going to make it happen because that's who I am.
And then the Gatorade comes out, and then the towel over the shoulder, and the sweat flies out. You got the whole commercial going.
Exactly right.
That's what happens. Well, they pay millions of dollars for us to feel that way. At least you knew it. That being said, we should finish this thing. And on one note, you may remember, while we are creating these kind of courses and classes, and what you just said there is something I really thought about. And it goes back to the Gary Keller, the one thing. And I think, and start with 1 push-up, 10 push-ups over time.
Exactly.
I think within our curriculums or things that we're going to do, or courses and so forth, I see all these people put like 5 things, do these 5 things and do these things. I want to go down to 1 thing for a week and show that we really work on that 1 thing and then build up. And that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about when we're going to start doing or already started. That's how
the final parallel I will draw to that is, even in most of the healing arts, the level of mastery that's sought to be achieved by the master healer is to find the 1 thing that'll create a pivotal change. In the acupuncture arena, it's to be able to make the healing happen with 1 needle. In the chiropractic world, it's the correction of the neurological interference of 1 bone. It might be 1 critical nutritional factor. It might be,
the tipping point, the breaking point. And I remember I was learning kiteboarding, in the kite. If you pull on the launch, if you pull too much, you sink into the water. If you pull too forward, you fly forward and you fall off your board and you get tangled and the wind takes you. And there's this perfect, and the guy kept saying over, Martin, you have to find the sweet spot. The sweet spot is right in the middle, not too far, not far. And that's the magic of it, is finding the sweet spot. And
exactly. And I think we've reached our sweet spot for today.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
That is the module here. I'm speaking with Dr. Larry Goodman, myself, Martin Casado, and go to the goodmanfactor.com. And there'll be many more things to come. All right.
Cool.
Well, have a good day, sir. Talk to you later.
You the same.